government troops want? Her?
There's no doubt about that. The government army planned the crash as well.
Why do we have to get caught up in this crap? We're not even fucking Marusan! It's Pachamama's fault! If you hadn't been on the flight, it would never have crashed!
I'm so sorry.
You don't have to apologize for anything. It's the Marusan government army's fault.
I've got an idea. If they want her, we should simply turn her over to them. What do you say?
How could you be so mean? That's the most absurd idea I've ever heard. We're witnesses. They'd never let us live.
I agree. Turning her over to them will not solve anything. Since we can't expect a rescue party now, we'll have to get off this mountain on our own. Unless we stick together and cooperate, we will never get out of this.
Shit!
Pachamama is fluent in Spanish. She might be of use sometime. Let's get off this mountain together with her. Okay, Steve?
Yeah.
It's another government army helicopter. It must be headed for the crash site.
We can't go back there again. Let's move off right away.
And so, things have managed to go from bad to worse. We've gone from merely being stranded on Aconcagua to now being active targets of the military in their attempts to assassinate Pachamama. The good thing is that Kato has really, thrown himself into the role of de facto leader, and he is trying his best to keep everybody on track and on target to getting down the mountain. Obviously, Pachamama is all for getting away from the military as quickly as possible, but our other party members seem to have their focus elsewhere. In the case of Julia here, she is more focused on the possibility that there is a juicy story waiting here. That is, if we can all make our way down the mountain alive. And as we've kind of seen from cutscenes regarding Steve, well, his motivations are a little bit more self-centered. He is more worried about how everything affects him, and yeah, it's hard not to want to just slap the shit out of him or leave him behind, but we are going to need him for the journey ahead, so we are going to be stuck with him. Still, after the argument and conflict that kind of presented themselves between Steve and Pachamama, I think it might be good to give them a little bit of room, so we're going to have Pachamama do a little bit of the exploring in this new area. And we can already see a bit of wreckage up in the distance there, so it seems like the best place to start. You never know when you might find something interesting just, sitting around. And in fact, amongst the wreckage here, it seems that there is a working radio, which gives Pachamama a bit of bad news. Seems there's going to be some nationwide rioting on Independence Day, and that could very well throw a cog into her whole push for democracy in the nation. As you might guess, it's kind of hard to do a, coup d'etat that leads into democracy. It's kind of a, despot type situation. So it's best to try to have a normal election there rather than a violent overthrow. Outside of that, kind of see something on the opposing bluff on the other side, so I guess that's where we might want to head next. The game really does a good job of trying to draw your attention to where you need to go, and that is very helpful because some of these mountain environments you can get a bit lost in. I mean, if we hadn't seen that thing on the hillside, we probably wouldn't know to maybe head upward. Yeah, while it just seems initially like more wreckage from the plane, there is something kind of easily missed next to the wreckage here. And again, it just seems to be what I think is supposed to be a newspaper from Maruza, but it's a bit strange because it somehow forecasts the oncoming civil war that Pachamama didn't really apparently know anything about. It's not really covered about whether she's been out of Maruza up until this point and she's just not fully aware of what's been going on, but yeah, it's a bit strange how it's set up here, that there's a radio playing information and just a magazine from inside the plane that kind of sets up the Civil War. But yeah, more importantly, what really drew our attention initially from the other side was, well, this large broken wing from the plane. Now, as of right now, we obviously can't do anything with this, but it is overlooking a very deep crevasse below us. And considering we don't really have anywhere else to go, that's pretty much our only option left. Now, as you can probably guess at this point, well, a deep crevasse just seems like another dead end. Still, there is a bit of wreckage, and there might be something else to see if we do take a closer look. It's just trying to work out where the camera angle will decide to change. But yeah, even upon closer inspections, things still seem pretty dire. Doesn't really seem like there's going to be any way for us to make it over this very, very deep crevasse here.
The mountain trail is cut off.
What do? We can't go anywhere.
Hey!
Who is he?
Are you all right?
Yeah, thanks.
Were you on the plane?
Yeah.
Have you seen any other survivors?
No one survived around me. You should get away from here, right away.
The government troops?
Yeah, they are after us.
Kato, let's move on.
Can you stand up, Mr...
It's Lopez.
I'm Kato.
Nice to see you, Kato.
And rather unexpectedly, we stumble across another survivor of the plane crash and our fifth and final party member. Yeah, Lopez here is a pretty interesting character all around, but right off the bat, Kato is all business. He wants to know if Lopez saw anything while he was escaping. And as you might imagine, Lopez was a bit more concerned with saving his life than trying to get a measure of what the military forces were up to. But yeah, Lopez is an American who, well, if we talk to everybody else, we'd find out that he was basically on his way down to Maruza to work out a little trade deal with the local merchants. And while that seems dangerous, I guess, with the political climate of Maruza, beggars can't be choosers, and you kind of have to do business where you can. But outside of being a suave American businessman, Lopez has one other very defining characteristic and what is pretty much going to be his defining role in our party. And it's a bit hard to tell just from looking at him, but you might notice that he is pretty broad-shouldered and quite a bit taller than the rest of our party. And yep, he is pretty much going to be the powerhouse in our group. So, let's have him take a look at the crashed airplane wing up here.
We can cross the crevice now. Whoever is following us.
What strength?
It's my only saving grace.
Now I'm fully happy that Lopez is willing to embrace his strength, but I do kind of feel that what he said was a little bit depreciating. I'm sure he has more to offer than his strength. Still, we have managed to put a little bit of space between us and the military, so we can go back to just general exploration. And while the first place we do start to poke around seems like a dead end, there's a little bit more wreckage over here. And amongst the wreckage, there is something of interest. Yeah, hidden amongst the wreckage is an emergency first aid kit. There's just one slight issue with it. It's obviously too big to carry with us. And Kanto here doesn't seem to be able to open it. Now, we could use Lopez's brute strength to maybe get inside of it, but in actuality, there is a cleaner way of doing things, and that's to call in our engineer Steve to see if his toolkit can't be a little bit of a makeshift key for us. Upon closer inspection, it does seem like he can open it. So we'll just get out his handy-dandy toolkit and get to work. Now, what could be waiting for us inside the emergency kit? Well, sadly, it's not a healing item. Instead, it's a fairly large and bulky oxygen tank. I guess that might be of some use for us at this high altitude. You never know when one of us could, be lacking in oxygen or have some, attack of vertigo. And that's still kind of the dangers of being on top of the mountain here. I mean, there's, environmental hazards all around, and as we're exploring around, it's just kind of hard to tell what's really going to be waiting for us around the next corner. Case in point, it seems like the government forces have managed to make their way ahead of us. And yeah, we're going to have to make our way forward without being seen. It's just, we don't really have many ways to take care of this soldier here. I mean, for Kato, all he really has are his climbing gloves, and I guess we could slap him with them, but yeah, that wouldn't really work. I mean, we did get that oxygen tank, but that's a bit too cumbersome for this. Yeah, the only really thing that comes to mind that we could probably use in this situation, something that Julia has. Now, while Kato is pretty quick to explain the situation to Julia, she seems like she knows exactly what she needs to do now. But she doesn't seem especially happy with the choice she has to make here. Well, I say that she doesn't seem happy, but all too quickly it seems like that mood shifts. It shifts from being, oh darn, what am I gonna have to do, to, hey, I have a very sharp knife. I know what to do with this. So yeah, let's go ahead and put that knife to use. Yeah, that was kind of an unexpected swerve in the story, especially for Julia. And obviously the rest of the party is a little bit confused about what exactly just happened there. I mean, obviously Steve is pretty apprehensive. I mean, why is a journalist carrying around a combat knife and very active in stabbing people? I mean, she tries to brush it away as just self-defense, but even Lopez seems to question it because she was also pretty quick to hide the dead body. Didn't really seem to even enter her mind that, oh no, I just totally murdered someone. But, you know, people react to dangerous situations in different ways. That might just be her defense mechanism for dealing with the situation they're in currently. Still, for right now, we won't really dwell on that too much. We still need to put, you know, some ground between us and the military forces that have already made their way ahead of us. True to what Lopez said, she did pretty quickly get rid of that body. Though I do kind of wish she might have kept the gun. The gun might have been useful in the future, but that's fine. None of us are soldiers. None of us know how to, use a gun. And, why should we even need to carry one anymore? I mean, we might be relatively safe for a while. And by a while, I mean about 20 seconds. Yeah, the enemy troops in this area are pretty thick and heavy. And that guy is a bit too far away for a stabbing, so we probably need to figure out another way around this situation. Thing is, we already defined where it looks like we can climb up, so we can head up there and see what avenues await us. For the most part, though, it's a pretty small area, and there's not that much to it. Just looking over the edge here. Yeah, it looks like that soldier is trying to keep warm by the wreckage. And that does give me a little bit of an idea about how we can deal with him. It's just a tad bit extreme, I'd say. But you know what? God must have given us that oxygen tank for a reason, and I think I know just what reason that might be. So let's go ahead and get Steve to go meet up with Kato. Let's just take that big, bulky oxygen tank off of Steve's hands. Just need to borrow it for a little bit of an extracurricular activity. So yeah, just another quick climb to get out of the way. And for those of you that aren't overly familiar with the chemical properties of oxygen, well, even though oxygen is a life-giving, substance for humankind, it also is very dangerous because it is extremely flammable. And yeah, you can kind of see where things are going. Now, as you might imagine, Kato does have a little bit of tinge of attack on his conscience here, what with blowing up a human being, but, we do need to keep moving forward, so what can you do? And hey, problem solved. And you know what? It's probably gonna be pretty good to pull in that Pulitzer Prize winning story that we're bound to write after we're possibly indicted for murder. But extenuating circumstances, right? Yeah, the puzzles definitely take a sudden change in course. It goes from merely find item A to climb up a cliff or find a knife to cut down some rope to hey, how can you easily and quickly dispatch all these enemy soldiers in super violent ways? But yeah, the soldier here was guarding this government tent, and inside of it we do find some more rope. And there's plenty of uses we can have for rope, right? Yeah, climbing, tying things up, strangling. And yeah, at this point, Kato doesn't even recognize the enemy soldiers as an obstacle, more just like, hey, he has something I want. How can I eliminate him to get it as quickly as possible? And for the eagle-eyed viewer, you might have noticed in the background there, yeah, there's another climbable texture. And it's another little elevated spot. But on the back end of the wreckage of the plane here, we do find a nice vantage point right over that enemy soldier. Now, we could use that rope, as I mentioned, in a number of murderous fashions, but there is a lot of danger in that for Kato, and well, there is a little bit of a cleaner and quicker solution to this puzzle here. First and foremost, though, we do want to go ahead and use that rope so we can get another person to climb up here with us. And that works out for us because there is this nice little sturdy rock here. It's a perfect place to set up that rope for climbing. Now we do have a few options of people that we can have to climb up here. There's Lopez, because he's strong, Steve, because he's whiny, but yeah, this is another stabbing job. I mean, it would be great if we had something we needed to light on fire, but that's not really what we need right now, so Julia kind of has to lean more heavily into her other treasured item of sorts. And, I mean, like, Kato has really jumped into his role of being our de facto leader. Julia's really jumped into her role of being our go-to murderer, let's say.
At last, we can call for help. Talk to me, Steve.
The output is too weak. We can't use this in the mountains.
Useless in the mountains.
Wait a sec, Steve. I hear something.
Let me hear it, please. Scouting party, scouting party.
It's their military transmission.
We have reached the point about 100 meters below you and are standing by for instructions.
What? Just 100 meters? They are just around the corner!
We have to take another mountain trail to move down before they spot us.
Let's hurry.
Man, the enemy troops were a lot closer than we originally thought. And to make matters worse, Kato notices that there's something a bit odd with the path ahead. Seems that there is the possibility that a lot of snow can build up, and when that snow does pile up, it almost gives the impression of solid ground. The problem is that if we do walk over that, well, it'll be a one-way ticket down the mountain, just not in the way we want. And yeah, we can't just sit here waiting around for the government troops to reach us, and instead, Kato, joining in the murderous fun of Julia, thinks that we could technically use those snowdrifts to our advantage. You know, we could laugh at, the times when the government soldiers fall to their deaths, or get caught up in avalanches. It gets a bit murky. For right now, though, we do need to just keep on pressing forward, and since Kato seems to know most about these snowdrifts and avalanches, we're going to have him be our scout in this situation. So at the fork here, I think it's best to head upwards. It might give us a better vantage point. And more importantly, amongst the wreckage here, we do find a very important item in the game. Down here on the ground, we find a first aid kit, and this is pretty much our only means of healing in the game. The problem is that it is a one-time use item, and while it does fill that one person up to full, well, we don't want to just use it all willy-nilly. The good thing is we should be able to find it pretty easily. It's right next to the, corpse. Further up the hillside, though, we do find well, just more burning fiery wreckage. Nothing much to it. But it is placed pretty precariously on this hillside here, which, as Kato mentions, is mostly just made up of very loose snow, so nothing really we can do with that. It's pretty much a dead end. So I guess that means we are going to have to take that other path. Just gotta try to navigate my way down as best I can. I don't mind the point and click controls for the most part, but sometimes they can be pretty finicky. But yeah, our danger meter is going off. And that's because, as Kato mentioned, what looks like solid ground is instead just a bunch of unstable snow that we are not going to be able to cross over. It is definitely a good idea that we had Kanto exploring first. Because, man, Aconcagua is just littered with all types of dangers. Both natural and man-made disasters. So we have a bit of an obvious problem here. Deep crevasse that we can't cover, and an enemy soldier that's just going to be looking directly at us. Kanto does have a bit of a brainstorm, though. If he can only lure the soldier over, the ground will become unstable, and the guy should fall to his death. It's just, how do we lure him over here? Oh, I know. Not the smartest idea. Definitely made us take a little bit of damage, but it's pretty much our only course of action. I mean, it is working out for us. The soldier is getting closer, but we are getting pretty close to death. Have a nice trip. See you next fall. Yeah, this game is sadly lacking in the witty one-liner department, but hey, the good news is we got rid of that soldier, and you know, as he fell to his death, it actually looks like he dropped something on the other side here.
This is a map of the area. What's this mark?
This should be the Government Army Communications Facility. I've got an idea. Maybe we can call for help from the base.
Hey, wait a minute. Didn't you say that it's a government army facility? That's suicide!
I don't think so. This facility is poorly guarded. We can sneak in.
Hey, Miss, how do you know so much?
What?
How do you know the location of the government army base?
I am a journalist. I can't reveal my sources.
Okay, even if we got access to their transmitter, who the fuck should we call? Is there anybody who'd come up here in the snow?
Yes, there is one. I know someone we can turn to.
What?
There are some units in the government army sympathetic to us. I know one commander who fought with my father for independence. He will help us.
Okay, let's go to the communications facility, as Julius says. We can keep descending on this route, can't we?
Yeah.
Alright, so we now have a good, straight, definite, or a destination that we can go to, and even better, once we get there, we can call for help. Also, obviously, before we continue on, it's a really good idea to make sure that we heal Kato back up to full health. I think, relatively speaking, you can probably take up to 4 hits from most sources of damage before you die, but yeah, we never really want to get that low on health, so that is pretty much the reason why they give you this medkit here. But yeah, we need to try to make our way to this communication station that Julia mysteriously knows about. It's just that it seems the more we press forward, the closer and closer we get to those enemy soldiers that we heard talking on the radio before. And things get a little bit more dicey here. The soldier doesn't make his way all the way over to us, but we are going to want to do a little bit of more in-depth stealth work here. And what we are inevitably going to want to do is to make our way over to that rock on the right-hand side there. Now, I take things a little bit more cautiously than I probably should here. I was a bit worried that the little bit of dialogue that Julia had would have not given me enough time to run over to the rock, and I think that was probably for the best, but yeah, once he turns around, we should be able to make a break for it. And yet again, we are in prime location for a stabbing.
¿Qué es ese ruido?
Es de armas de fuego, ¿no?
Posiblemente es el grupo de exploración que está cortando las comunicaciones. ¡Vamos! ¡Shit!
Well, that certainly didn't go as well as I had expected. And obviously, Julia feels the same. But yeah, we are definitely stuck between a rock and a hard place here. Government troops are pushing their way forward, and realistically speaking, there's no place we can head backwards, so yeah, we need to take care of these troops right here, right now. Problem is that there's just way too many of them to stab, and well, we're all out of oxygen tanks or reasonable sources of fire, so we are going to have to look around for some other answer to this problem. First is this wall that that one soldier shot at. Seems it did have an avalanche recently, and in fact, it's actually the base of that, I guess, unstable cliffside that we went to before. Also, there is another little government tent here, and usually those do have a goodie or two inside of them. And what you know it, there is magically another oxygen tank in there. And, well, the cogs of my brain are slowly going into gear here. There was that fire at the top of the incredibly unstable cliffside, and, well, we do happen to know what happens when we mix fire and oxygen. Yeah, that does give me a pretty good idea. Just we are definitely working against the clock here. And I will say this does definitely heighten the tension of the game, especially if you're not very accustomed to the general movement of the game, or if you made the misfortune of not heading up the hill here to even know that there was some fiery wreckage at the top. I mean, even with knowing where things are and trying to get around as best I can, still cutting it pretty close here. But yeah, I think it's time to take care of this government soldier problem.
Get behind the rock!
Now we can see if our plan worked.
Were they killed?
We've got no time to lose. Let's move to the communications facility.
Okay.